Yeah, I think I had to cancel 2 trips, but that is really on the lower side. The world is grappling with a very, very big challenge. Just last night, the U.S. president has declared a state of emergency in the United States.
After banning European countries?
Yes.
26 countries.
Yeah, it's not something small. We've had complete lockdowns of countries like Italy and so on. The economy, the world economy is going to take a big hitting, and eventually smaller economies like us are going to have the effects. It has disrupted the movement of goods and services and people. Everything really is in turmoil. It's more or less another world war. The lives is claiming the numbers are quite high. I can see the markets, global markets, are also suffering. Central banks have come in to use public resources now to caution the effects. Really, the eventual effects of the economies of the world economy in the next year, after 6 months today, you'll be feeling it at a personal level. Having said that, countries really are trying their best. For the first time, I think today is a day for niceties. I see Minister Achange, the lady's done an incredible job in terms of public awareness. She's on the television, on the media houses every other day. Generally, the population now knows the don'ts and the do's. We all know what to do and so on. From what I hear, the Minister of Health has also done its best to prepare in case we start having, individual cases. We took even some very good political decision the other day. Was it 3-4 days ago? When we barred people from those countries which we think the virus is on rampage, including the big ones. It takes a little bit of courage to say Americans don't come to our country. British don't come to our country. It takes a little of political courage to take that decision, and you must commend the government. I saw it in Kenya. In Kenya,
if Australia had failed to stop Chinese from getting into China, that's how much.
Sorry?
If up to now, Chinese students are still cannot be banned from entering Australia, that is when you realize how hard it is to ban a country. And you remember, China is the epicenter of the virus. Okay, now Europe is the epicenter.
Yeah. Wow.
But I agree with what Abdu's saying. It's not a joke for a country to ban citizens from another country, especially countries of a superior powers to you, from entering your country, because you get into so much diplomatic trouble, and they'll try to wrestle you into making decisions contrary to your own based interest, because they are better than you, they've given you aid, etc.
And just look at Kenya, because they had even allowed flights from China. It took the courage of the Law Society of Kenya to go to court and say the government is being extremely reckless. You can't do this. And the court also took that hard decision. Excuse, Kenya, in Kenya, Chinese flights not allowed. So really, let's. I hope we don't.
So the Kenyan court took executive decisions.
But they were forced.
They made a judicial decision on an executive matter.
And let me tell you what happens. The judicial should always be our last line of defense. When we fail to do our job, the judicial should come in and call us to order, whether you're executive, whether you're the legislature, and that's what the Kenyan judiciary did. So, to me, I think it is a crisis. We thank God we've not yet had any case, but we now have in the neighborhood. Kenya, there is a case. Of course, the DRC has a case, and we have these porous borders. Especially the one on DRC, I'm very much worried about our entry points. Turiamu who is here. Sorry, Turiamu who is here. we need to be careful with them and their people. We should really have them to to know that really their neighbor is really, really in trouble. However, Uganda has had an experience of being faced with this sort of crisis. The way we handled the AIDS scourge, we are so open about it, and we eventually, got on top of the situation. When we are faced with Ebola, people like Dr. Lukuya, let his soul rest in peace, they paid the ultimate price, but these were our heroes. We managed to get over it. So I hope we learned through the Ebola and AIDS experiences, and we shall be on top of the situation. Otherwise, kudos to the Ministry of Health. So far.
Fred?
Yes. Thank you, Oscar. You see, this coronavirus is the deadliest thing I've experienced.
I don't know about deadly. Its death rate is at 3%, whereas Ebola was 50%.
Listen, this coronavirus was just announced 4 months ago in one country, in China. In the last 3 months, it has spread to over 130 countries.
The spread, yes. In fact,
yes, but you never know what
the German Chancellor was saying it may infect up to 70% of Germans.
Of Germans?
Yes.
Now, if it does that in Germany, God forbid it jumps here in Uganda. What percentages are we talking about? My concern...
But as MP, I'm trying to get you into perspective. When we had Ebola here, to get Ebola, plus the stigma with Ebola,
right.
When you get Ebola, your chances of death, in fact, that 50% has only just recently improved to 50%. Previously, and this is where Uganda did great. If you were infected with Ebola when it first came out, even here in Uganda, your chances of dying were 80%.
Right.
And it is because of good works that it has gone down to 50%.
Right.
With Corona, it has gone to 3%.
Yes, but it is going up. That is where the challenge is now.
Can I help you on this? Oscar, 3% of 1 million is different from 3% of 1,000. So if you're saying 50% of 1,000 in terms of numbers, if you're saying 50% of 1,000 people, that is 500 people dead. If you're saying 50% of a million people, 3% of a million people, that's... So when you look at the way the corona spreads,
let me interrupt you a little bit.
It spreads much more than Ebola.
You're making me a debater now. Let me interrupt you a little bit, Namfi. You know Namfi, Robert, Namfi plays between accountant and lawyer. Now, she started with accountant. Now she's gone to lawyer. Namfi, with the corona, we know the actual number of deaths.
No, we do.
Yes.
We do,
so
but we are talking about potential here. We are talking about potential here
Yes.
of the two viruses.
Yeah.
One spreads very, very quickly, very fast, and then stays in the air much longer.
But it does not kill very fast.
It doesn't kill very fast, but that is why I'm playing with the numbers.
Right. Yes.
But I was saying this, Oscar. The major concern I have actually is about its origin.
Yeah.
Now, first leave the speed at which it is spreading. The origin. When HIV came, we knew how it was being transmitted. When Ebola came, we knew and we were told to avoid monkeys. When bird flu came, all the chicks were, hacked down. This one, there is still a debate. They started by saying it was transmitted from a certain animal. We don't know which animal to avoid. Now there is a debate saying it has started from America. If now it turns out to be like
we call it laboratory.
They even say bat. Just now they have said bats. But just Oscar, if it turns into a biological, instrument or tool of war.
No. Fred, I must take umbrage. I don't like our MPs speaking like this.
No, I brought it as my concern.
And I'm trying to say, stop having it as that concern and do a bit more research. There is what they call the Marburg. Someone tapped Namfi on the shoulder.
Okay.
There's what they call the Marburg. It was also a virus as well.
Right.
And the gentleman that eventually found it has written a book, and the book was recently published. to find out the cause of a virus, for all the ones you are talking about, a minimum of 12 months it takes to find out. And this is the same with our ordinary flu. Some of these flus you don't know where they came from. And many times some of the things you've cited, it is not, that was not the cause. But this is a virus like many others. And if you take care as you would take, you would not get the a common cold.
Okay, fine. So to conclude on this, what I was saying, just on my concern, that it has shut down, the sports, global sports. It is shutting down schools. It is shutting down, air transport, water transport. So that is where my concern lies. What won't it shut?
Yeah.
And so my concern for Uganda was, well, God forbid it has thank God it has not reached here, and God forbid it shouldn't. But then, just in case, and I want to appreciate that our country is a bit prepared. The statements issued by the Minister of Health have been reassuring. The experience of Ebola and the other viruses that have come, we can use that to stem it down. But my concern still remains where it has shut all these institutions, the sports and whatever, that if it comes, then there will be some bit of trouble. But I think where we are right now, we can still, reign in this cover where we are.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't come to devastate our country.
We have a government man in the studio who supplied me with a sanitizer today, Moses Biarahanga. If we have one of my MPs, Fred, reduced to prayer, we are really in trouble because his hope is in prayer. We need to do more than prayer. And usually he's a very, very reasonable man.
No, but you have senior counsel, Katuntu is also an MP who is more confident.
Yeah.
So the two will strike a balance. Will somehow strike a balance.
Yeah.
And in the American system, the Katuntus who have been there for 4 terms, they call them, the MP has been there much longer. I've forgotten the terminology they use. So we need to rely on them also. Now, you see, I agree with what Honorable Katuntu said. The Minister of Health has come up, and you, Oscar, with measures to sensitize the public on what to do and what not to do. I also commend some media houses which have been giving their own sponsored ads without being sponsored by either an NGO or the ministry to sensitize the public. And I think this is like a third time we are discussing this on this show. So Capital Gang also must be commended.
And one of these days, I should ask you why you don't have your own radios and TV. Government.
But we don't. We have, but the private sector.
When did Moses last go there? When did Moses last go there? But that's a discussion for another day.
You don't listen. You don't watch it. So, what is important? I remember I said it 2 weeks ago when we were here. Is the personal hygiene? From what the message is being given, this question of washing hands will not only will it help us against the spread of corona, but it also helps in the spread of many other diseases. The whole issue of how is your body prepared, I said it last time, that when you look at the statistics, they are saying that the most vulnerable are the aged and those who have underlying issues, mainly meaning people whose immunity is low for different reasons. In other words, you already have some other sicknesses, either chronic or otherwise, with your immunity being low. So when you get coronavirus, and it increases your chances of death and so forth. So now the question is, in what form has it found you? That's important. So in other words, public prevention measures, public health or prevention measures are important. In fact, this issue of washing hands, being careful about what we eat and what we do, it could be a continuous thing even after the coronavirus is out. I want to join the Honorable Fred that we pray it doesn't come to Uganda. But I think even though it came to Uganda, the measures which have been taken by the Ministry of Health, which all rotate about the individuals, Ugandans, how prepared they are good enough to prevent the spread we shouldn't say, okay, if in Europe it is moving at such
prevent, but you can minimize.
We shouldn't also be so much scared. Like, think the scare which is in the Honorable Fred is if it can be devastating in Europe the way it is, what about here? But also remember the way, if you're on the street, say in London, the way people mix and it's so
Underground trains.
it's so much more than it is here.
Underground trains.
Of course, here you have areas. The other day when we were in a meeting, somebody was asking about how is like a place like Owino prepared and so forth and Chikubo. We need to sensitize those people much more. Sensitize them in case of a problem. Maybe shut them down. In case you hear problems, those are the measures to be taken. But if you avoid those public gatherings, I think we could minimize it. But as I was saying, that in Europe, because of the way people move, if you are moving in public trains and so on and so forth, the rate at which can spread is much higher. So the fact that it is hitting those countries much higher doesn't mean when it comes to Uganda, it will be devastating. I don't think so. Even though it was Ebola, it's still 50 to those countries, it will be much more serious than it was here. So we need to keep sensitizing our people on the do's and the don'ts. Yesterday, I was talking to Haji Mandela, the owner of these CJ restaurants. The other day, I went to one of his branches in Entebbe, and I was entering, they gave me something to sanitize the hands. So yesterday, I went to one, and they didn't give me the same. So I called him, I said, how come in Entebbe they are sanitizing hands, and here they are not? He said, no. From today. That's what he told me yesterday. They are going to have, all of them will be doing it. And I said, what about the tables? Because they say it can stay on the hard surface for a longer period. He said that when they are cleaning the tables, those rugs have a sanitizer in them. I said, I didn't know about this. So if such measures, especially where a public go like
but even soap can do that.
Fine.
I think we think of sanitizer all the time. In Kenya, for example, sanitizer is fastly running out, but soap can do it.
But even here,
in Europe, it is worse.
Even here.
In New York, they're making their own sanitizer.
Because you can't get it on
So like my concern was a public place like a restaurant. When they are cleaning the tables, of course, that table may be sat on by maybe 20 people in the course of the day. You don't know who has done what. Because the mode of spreading is through those molecules from a person who is infected. If they are on the table and they can stay there for a longer period, then that table needs to be cleaned well and sanitized. So those are the measures we need to take. And so I was concerned calling Haji Mandela, Umar, but he's not known as Mandela, because his restaurant chain is the biggest in the country. It gets people, so many get in. But when he assured me that the cloth they use to clean the table is sanitized, and they are whoever coming in is being asked to sanitize their hands, I was a bit happy that something like that is being happening. So we need, how can we spread this kind of work across all public places
and maintain it?
Yeah, and maintain it. In fact, even after the threat, if we maintained it, because the doctors will tell you 80% of the diseases are preventable. So it is because we don't prevent them that we never suffer them. Others today, the people are talking of non-communicable diseases is now the big issue in Uganda. It's a very big issue among the elite. Last time when I mentioned something here, Oscar, the friend, who is also my friend, sent messages for the contrary. When I said some Ugandans have said, no, you mentioned the elite. Many people among the elite class are either overweight or obese, which is...
But his discussion was the elite are the fewest in the country.
But even they are few...
They're like 0.1%.
Indeed.
But they are the ones who travel a lot. You don't get a person from... If you look at how many people from Bugweri travel in a year, Katuntu...
He's a zero.
But they are elite. They are elite MP. The elite MP is on the plane every month. So
I think you deliberately refused to listen to him, Moses.
He
was saying Moses, you're a government person, and in your deliberations and your work, you are not particularly looking after Katuntu or Chironda. You are looking after all the other people he was mentioning. And he's putting to you that actually these diseases affect those people more than Katuntu, who might be obese. That is the argument. Yes.
Okay, we do not have a debate, but it's true. Non-communicable diseases like diabetes, like pressure and so forth are more pronounced today among the elite because of the life, and that's what they call lifestyle diseases.
Moses, they are there even in rural areas. Only that people say they have been bewitched.
Yeah,
fine.
They are not diagnosed.
Robert.
But they are.
I do agree with you that we need to guard against that. We need to sensitize our people on why they come to that, because they are non-communicable. By the time they realize many times it is too late. So how do we sensitize our people to avoid, whether they are in rural areas, whether in the urban areas, to avoid getting this kind of disease?
Robert, we're back to corona. So part of a challenge of corona is the irrational fear.
Yes.
More than the actual disease.
Yes. Corona has been, in my view, there's something strange about the way the publicity around this disease has happened. The statistics that I have seen, and I hope I'm seeing the correct ones, the statistics I have seen indicate that it is not the disease that is killing the highest number of people per day. The spread is wide, the mortality rate is low. Secondly, it is killing more advanced age people. A doctor friend of mine this morning, I was with Dr. Dan this morning, and he was pointing out certain facts that I hadn't thought about. He said, number one, you're looking at people who are elderly, and mostly those who already have certain health issues and challenges. They're the ones who are dying the most. So the numbers are lower than most diseases. The impact has come mainly from the publicity, and the impact is adverse. Honorable Katuntu mentioned the impact on the markets, the economies, central banks, and all of that. On Tuesday night, I was flying back in from Nairobi with a friend of mine who runs an import-export business at Mombasa, and she said, look, we are now starting to feel it because the number of boxes coming in is much lower. This morning, a doctor friend of mine pointed out that actually, contrary to what you don't realize, the impact has already hit us because drugs, the supply is now reducing. Why? Because 80% of the world's drugs that are sold come out of India. India is now hoarding. Why? Because most of the raw materials they use to produce those drugs come out of China. So we have to start to have a conversation. Thank God for the work that has happened in the in the Ministry of Health, and many thanks to the Ministry of Health for the work they've put in. Now let's start to talk about the economic impact, because Chikubo will feel it. And once Chikubo is feeling it, we will all feel it in our pockets. It will hit inflation, and so goes the spiral. So we need to start thinking about what is Corona teaching us about the way our society runs. Can we make some of these things we're importing here? Number one. Number two, can we survive a national catastrophe beyond the mortality circumstances? I have always been, and sometimes I wonder when I talk about the late Dr. Matthew Lukuya, if anyone is looking out for his family after all these years. Because for me, that's always the case I go back to say Uganda can actually become a world leader, because no country in the world can take on Ebola better than us. We teach the world how to do this. And I think that from that we can manage many of these challenges. We have gifted doctors here, and we need to put them to excellent use and pay them well. However, we now need to go back into thinking about our social construction of society. What jobs can we do from technology? I read something the other day on Twitter that just amazed me. Think about all the disabled people who have been working from home because of Corona, and they could have worked from home. Do we, as employers, need to think about how we change the workplace and what policies we put in place? Of course, there will be cultural issues and deficiencies and all of that, but maybe we need to start the conversation about what is possible and what is not. So beyond the economic, we need to go into the cultural, we need to go into the social. How much do we buy things online? Maybe young people who are jobless should now be thinking about starting online platforms to import and export goods, to sell services and things like that because of what's happening elsewhere in the world. Do we need to start rethinking our approach to society generally because of the way the disease is impacting us? Also, it is interesting to sit in a studio and listen to different, people of different political aspirations uniting on something like Corona. How I wish we were able to unite on things of genuine concern to everyone, the same way that, we all rally around challenges like this and say, Corona is bad. The publicity, for me, there is something truly fundamentally strange. But I remember watching a clip about President Trump's press conference yesterday, and I thought to myself, maybe now it's time to start thinking about the conspiracy theories. Is this disaster capitalism? What's going on here?
The New York Times.
When you go to Target and so on and
Yeah.
CVS, I think he's looking for the man and help.
Yeah.
Because you see, you in a situation like this, you need the public-private partnership.
That's true.
Yeah, because that's where he has gotten the laboratory equipment manufacturers for purposes of kits and so on, and money.
Joe Biden had given his program on how he would have dealt with it if he was the president, and it was not a simple one.
Yes,
So President Trump
know.
was responding.
Yes, he
But-
was.
but-
he was.
but I-
On this one, actually.
Abdu, I thought about you because you like these American things, and I was thinking, with his pronouncements, I hope someone will challenge him that what he has put out is an Obamacare ineffective.
Absolutely.
Effectively.
Absolutely. And
he's fought it all his life.
My girlfriend Pelosi had already come up with her own bill and so on. The Democrats were moving ahead of Trump. So he had no choice. He was trying to catch up and he said, okay, now I can access around 40 billion. I think $50 billion for purposes of mitigating
In
and
fact,
so on.
the whole thing of emergency is not what is the problem. The state of emergency allows him
to access
the money.
to access the resources, yes.
So yes, Robert, you are on microphone.
So the point, I guess I was making 3 points. Number one, as society, what do we learn from this? Even the political point that the Honorable Katuntu brings up now, what would be a political response and what drives it in a catastrophe like this? There is no taking away from the fact that by the time the WHO classifies something as a pandemic, it is serious. Number one. Number two, we need to think about if Corona were here, would we see the kind of responses where, for instance, one party has actual solutions moving forward, even ahead of what government would do, and therefore, even if government were compelled to walk that path because they want to get political mileage, at least you have solutions coming out. Number three, would you have these public and private alliances coming in to say, let's solve this for the common good? Number four, I think now is a good time for us to think about how we treat our doctors and how we care for them, and because of what they really can do. I have read some work by Dr. Dan, I think it's Tumwine, and sharp, articulate, easy to understand things about these conditions. People here, every time I travel, I get more inspired by just how much talent we have in this country. But also to think about, for me, a young lady sent me a message and said, you're more articulate on technology and society. What can we learn about technology's place in our society today? And I began to think
I thought
immediately.
you are more articulate in singing.
Singing.
In the singing.
Work in progress.
Man of many
But
trades.
think about it. A young person contacted me and said, you have a bigger platform, maybe can you try and say this? And I started to think about, and then I had met a young person who had just set up an online platform. That's where my examples are coming from. How do we change the way people think about society today? Can we think about imports and exports differently now that China is a no-go area? I think about the Ugandan lives of those kids who are in China, Wuhan. I don't know if they were rescued or not.
Yes,
What's happening to them?
They're being looked at.
And so all of these things teach us to come back essentially to the most important thing in society, which in my view is being human.
We're going to stop for a break, and after the break, I'll have Namfi and Fred. And what I'd like Namfi and Fred to look at is the effect of social media. For example, Fred is a politician here. How can you use social media for your campaign? Because the corona is also bigger because of social media, and social media has all these sorts of doctors as well. And for Namfi, I don't know whether you have it in Rukunji, but Namfi also for social media, the way it can suck you in, and you believe some of the things that are happening.
Capital Gas.